let's move this or that so we can see the board. There we go. Good. All right. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see everybody. I was reading the chat room, so this kind of got me caught up. I'm reading Strikers at, is this from tonight? Yeah. That's fascinating, if everybody can read it. It's a lot of information on Benjamin Disraeli. I think we left off last time having communications with him. It's interesting because even to this day, I didn't realize how prominently known he was. But this is really interesting that that the first Cream album, Eric Clapton's band in the late 60s was, oh, okay, the album. That's fascinating. Okay. It's amazing. So probably a lot of you have been witnessing or experiences with these souls, letting you know that they're there, showing themselves, being playful, I've seen a lot of people having things with electricity and with lights, a lot of physical evidence that these souls are around and supporting us, and not that they're just here, but that they're here to help to get our attention, to help us to understand that we are significant, because we have to be significant in order to bring souls through that we also know to have been significant. I think that's part of the fun of the dance and seeing evidence of their existence in your real life, is to just continue on that journey of knowing that you are significant. And, you know, even if you weren't here for the first 3 of the Delve into the Answer series, the prominent part that did come out was for us to recognize on a daily basis in a tangible way that we matter, that we are significant. And having abilities to see or hear or feel or sense or get signs from souls that have made their mark on Earth long ago, so that we recognize that in their lifetime, the Earth believed them to be significant, which is how they left a recognizable mark. Then that helps if we're being contacted by them or they're making their presence known. It helps us to understand that we too are significant. I just see from Teresa answering, it was the Cream album was titled Disraeli Gears. That's just such a fascinating story. I'm kind of tripping over it, and there's more here. Wow. I'm going to save the chat room tonight so I can read that more in depth. So thank you, Teresa. I really appreciate that. That's so fascinating. And that's one of the things that I always think authenticates the journey here and communicating with the non-physical, is that when you find evidence and it's just stuff you can't make up, and how the information and the evidence comes to you, it's validating over and over again. So welcome back further into the answers. I know we'll be communicating with souls that have authored passages in here, as well as communicating with souls that want to give us a little bit more of a hint of what they have in store for us, what they have planned. Since we're probably in the most significantly unknown periods of most of our Earth lives, it would be interesting to see how they're fitting into this and what this transition and their participation in it means for us and means for others. But more significantly, not just what it means, but how we can use that information to help make the journey and the passages more harmonious for us. There's still going to be people that are experiencing lots of extremes and lots of challenges, or some people are sinking and not necessarily knowing how to come back out of it. But the whole idea is that we are not alone. We have support, and we can tap into that support for anything. It's an endless source. So just when we think we might have come to the edge of the known, they're there to help us understand that we're nowhere near the edge of the known, that we're creating the new known after the edge. quite a while ago, to further explain that, I was communicating with guides just about the process of exploration. And I was always curious about how that process works in the scheme of things. If we are creating a mutual reality through the projection of our consciousness, then how does exploration play into that? Because wouldn't we have to project that is what we will be exploring, right? So it feels like a little bit of a chicken and egg, is if we're projecting consciousness, how can we explore if we have not yet discovered something or projected it? There was a passage in here that helped liberate me from that understanding, and it was about how when the first explorers or any early explorers were leaving European coasts, like let's just say the coast of Spain, when they left, and even if they had the mission of exploring the waters and the lands geographically, or if they had a mission of running down here and picking up some minerals or some herbs or some fruits and bringing them back, when they were out and about navigating the waters, before this land mass was known, we were in this big unknown pocket. So when an explorer or a traveler went back home to their port, they didn't beat up on themselves about not having found the new world, not having navigated correctly to the new world, because they didn't know a new world existed. It was only until they knew that the new world existed that they could put it as a destination or a compass point to then go and explore that. So what we're actually doing all the time in our physical lives is we are exploring what consciousness has already projected into the physical. So one of the things that's very known in science, and I've had some really cool conversations with Seth in particular about this, because as I explained, Seth has always been my science guy. He's the one that likes to explain vibrational energy through more of scientific approach, okay? So what happens is as we're projecting into the physical manifestation, the physical manifestation is expanding. That's how science knows, or they have proven that we're in an expanding universe. Like certain things about science are known now. So how could we be in an expanding universe if this is all a projection of consciousness? Well, what happens is, wherever we are in history, the tools and the means that we have to explore within that century or that decade or that geographical location, we're only going to be able to explore to the edge of what equipment and knowledge is available to us in that moment. And as soon as we approach the edge of what has been previously explored, then our consciousness is projecting universally. All souls within and without bodies are projecting the next level of consciousness and an explosion of creativity. It sounds linear and it sounds literal. It's far more advanced and complicated than that, but that's basically how it works. So when we're looking at the stars, or we're looking at a galaxy or a solar system, within the earliest confines of what could be seen with the naked eye or a telescope, we can only observe that which had been projected into this experience of physical manifestation. Once we had explored and observed and recorded and measured and done all that we could do within that first level, we would approach an edge, and the expanding universe would create the thing which we would then adapt and create more opportunity to be able to explore past that edge. Okay? The reason we're talking about this, I'm just going to say weird tonight, because again, this is not my gig. This is their gig. So I don't have something to say about this. So the reason they're giving us this concept at the very beginning about the expanding universe and the projection of consciousness is because 2020 is obviously apparently now a transitional year. So 2020 is a year where our projection of consciousness enters into the physical manifestation of reality for the development of the soul. But this is not, after this, it's not known. It's not known. Because in this expansion and in this acceleration, what we consciously project is forming what's on the next edge. Okay? So I've been able to comfortably predict a lot of our earthly happenings from 2006 on. And what I've started to recognize is that the parameters that create a known have become more limited because more people are getting connected more rapidly. All right. I got it all. Seth just downloaded it all. Now I have to unfold it for you, right? Okay. So let's do that a little more slowly. Okay. All right. Let's say that there's a car moving in this direction, and there's a car moving in this direction, and there's a car moving in this direction. And you can't see any of those. So we're going to go lower on that one. Good thing I looked up, right? Can't you see it in my head? Come on, guys, you're all intuitive. All right, so now in the workspace, there's a car going here, there's a car going here, and there's a car going here. Now, if you were to do the mathematic probability and add in the conditions of the road, how well inflated everybody's tires are, their rate of speed, what the weather was, wind resistance, and everything else, we would be able to completely predict when or if they would intersect. Am I correct? So in 2005, this was more of what I was able to do than I can today. It's not because I have less of a conduit available to me, but it's because in 2005, even though we are one humanity sharing a globe, we were still far more divided through space and geography. Yes, we had the internet, but it as a resource in persuading or influencing or communicating with others was still not that known or explored yet in 2005, okay? So even though we had already had developed ways to transport ourselves physically to get from one location to another, the lag in between buying a ticket, getting on a plane, going somewhere else, by the time you land anywhere, news is different than when you took off. Am I correct? So the internet is a game changer. It doesn't matter where you are. If you have access to the internet, you have access to tap into the collective consciousness. Depending on where you focus on will be what you feed your consciousness, which will project your next consciousness. Then came the advent of very organized and oftentimes manipulated social media. So with social media added into the equation of the internet, and we were experimenting with influencing others in a massive way without the journalistic process that had been typical in using the communication of information worldwide. Then we got to influence people for better or worse within fact or not fact. Most of you have heard me say, if you were attending last time or not, it doesn't matter, but fiction is what it is that we're experiencing here. There are no facts. Facts are fiction. So if we are now able to create facts out of fiction more rapidly because of this massive device that connects us, what we're doing is we're changing the physical manifestation of reality more rapidly than we ever have before, and in an accelerated process, in an accelerated path. Does everyone understand that? you know, I haven't had a conversation one-on-one with Seth in a really long time, but I forgot how rapidly he goes and how hard it is to catch up as a human being. So I hope I'm effective in keeping up with his communications. I am attempting to do that, all right? So now, if we now have social media, which is added into this interconnected mix of communications through other means and global transportation, which has been developing over the last 100 to 150 years. We add in social media and we are removing the journalistic process from communicating information. I'm not saying that there's no good journalists out there or no good publications or sources of media anymore, but you got to kind of look for that needle in the haystack now to find journalistic integrity or even the truest form of the journalistic process. So what this means is that we don't even care about fact anymore in the scheme of the new world, this new era that we're in. Fact is, now we know that it's fiction because it's being created by anyone that has an agenda or anyone that has misinformation, okay? So the timeline, oh wow, we're really jumping in here. I thought we'd do a little warm up, but I guess Seth is like, we're here, let's just get in. This was not what I anticipated at all, so let's just keep on going, okay? So the timeline is that we're just going to look at the timeline of just the viral period from, let's say, March of 2020 to just today, okay? It's a tiny, tiny, tiny window that we're looking at right here. When I was in Grenada giving the year before a seminar in January, I got a hint of all of this. I knew there was going to be a worldwide event that would very, very clearly tie us together. My expectation, I didn't ask, I don't like to have previews of specific challenges. I prepare people for generalized challenges, but I don't like knowing specific information because it is fiction. It can change it in a given second. So my best guess was that we were going to have outages, electrical and internet outages that would have this worldwide catastrophe, so to speak. Well, it turns out that it's a virus, not a computer virus, but a virus. So I was preparing people very, very, very heavily for this event for 2020, probably since 2018, doing nothing but prepare people for this. So when the actual virus appeared, I was living within the information of the context of communication with guides from the last quarter of 2018 through January of 2020. And I knew paths of projection. What I've always seen, paths of projection from the beginning of what I've been doing. Let me erase this again. I can't even keep up with him. I'm really sorry if I'm going too fast. But the way things unfold, the paths that we are traveling on, the paths unfold based on probability, right? So when I was talking about those three cars intersecting, there was a probability of them intersecting based on all of the events that we talked about. Tire inflation, rate of speed, how people were paying attention in the car, what the road conditions were. And that's just one singular event. We could predict the outcome mathematically. At the beginning of this virus, the guides were doing a fantastic job in predicting the outcome, okay? But because of this process here, they can't predict it anymore because it changes based on what we project into the physical reality of human existence. So because we are so connected, so instantaneously connected. And since so many people are plugged into sources that have an agenda that is not the well-being of humanity, not the emotional well-being or physical well-being of humanity, our projections have shifted since March. So what was given to me in March is that by the end of May, we would be pretty much back to this being in our rearview mirror, okay? But as we approached and we got into April, and then we got into mid-April, and then we were at the end of April, it was almost as if I was getting a news feed that was changing the timeline constantly because people sat locked up with nowhere to go and nothing to do, with the vast majority of them sitting in front of the internet or news programs. So what was being fed to people was a body of consciousness that was similar instead of different. So what it did was it extended and pushed out the timeline. The value of the viral period initially was not served, so it became exacerbated. The more consciousness that we put into something, with fear, with distrust, with resistance, with a lack of freedom, with letting other people be our experts, with not being deciders for our own well-being, the more we give that to any one thing, the more the thing will become bigger and bigger and bigger until our touch point in it has very, very little effect, limited effect comparatively to what the effect was that we used to have. It's so interesting. I remember in 8th grade having one of the coolest teachers I'd ever had. He made us bring in, current, something from the newspaper, right? So we did current affairs at the beginning of every day. And you had to, glue it in your notebook and then write something about it. And it was his way of training us to be a part of the process in the world in which we live. And with an expectation that it would be not just domestically, but also globally. And, most of us, we were in 8th grade, we cheated. I'd find a little article on page 16 that was about this big, and then I'd write this much about it. But what the challenge is what we were able to do in understanding our role in the world and the way the world unfolded was uncomplicated comparatively to today. So today, if we were to clip a newspaper article and bring it in to tell our teacher the following day what was going on and write a little passage about what was going on, it would be obsolete by the time we raised our hand and shared our article. Does everybody understand that? And there would be no one agreement as to the factual basis for what was printed in the article to begin with. So what I'm telling you from Seth, he's trying to lay it out scientifically, and I hope I did an okay job in this, is that the role of the guides that have channeled the answers through me and who are in the beginning of communicating with you, their role from this point on is to help us navigate a whole new world, because all of the rules or expectations of predictability and influence are changing. It doesn't mean that there aren't any of either. It just means that the vibration behind them and beneath them has changed. So they're asking us to become aware of what the changes are and how they affect our reality, and what we can do with those changes to create and co-create a more harmonious existence for ourselves and preferably for others as well. I honestly, I'll take a pause here for a second. My expectation was that in these 3 classes, that the guides would talk about their role in the 3rd class. I did not expect them to come in the beginning of the first class and lay this all forth this rapidly. This was not my expectation. I thought we would do a nice gentle segue from the last three classes into going further or deeper into the answers. This was not my expectation. But here's how this worked. Earlier today, Guides had me open up the book. Every now and then I get to do something like this too. I opened it up twice and I read the passages and I thought to myself, these are really appropriate for the third class. They're not appropriate for tonight, but I could tell that they would be important about Guides talking about where the world is. So I opened up the book twice and I read 2 paragraphs today, and that was it. Let me show you the paragraphs that I found, or they found me, or they brought me to them. Okay. All right, here's the first one. It's August 9th, 2005. So whether you have the old edition or the new edition, at least you can look along with me. It was book session 48. Formulate a specific goal plan before you begin. As in all course of study, learning how to maximize your ability to be happy takes structure. The task is not one that can be undertaken haphazardly, as though reading one book will guarantee your joy through some ominous-like exchange. You must work a little. Be forewarned, however, that a good number of people are so complacent and comfortable in their present state of content that they will not extend the effort to release themselves. Imagine that some people will actually make a subconscious choice to remain unhappy, because the familiarity with that state is less intimidating than a state of joy. I don't remember the passage, and I don't remember most of the book until I'm brought to it again. What is mind-blowing about that being the first passage that I opened to today is that the guides are helping us understand, and Seth specifically is helping us to understand that that paragraph is basically the theme for the virus. It's the theme for every exploration that we're having right now that are becoming more known and more significantly approached by a growing number of people, such as Black Lives Matters, and just the approach that we're having with increasing in riots, and different camps are saying we should be allowed to live our lives, and the other camp saying no, we shouldn't be allowed to live our lives with the viral period. But basically what we're seeing here is, with all of the divide and all of the confusion and all of the opportunities that people are having to listen or to participate, but they're not listening and they're not participating, is that people have a strong habit of staying exactly where they are within their vibrational energy. So wherever they are in their decades-long state of happiness energetically, they're going to stay in that state, even though the beginning of the viral period gave them an opportunity to completely throw away the state that they were in. They had an opportunity to let go, to change, to reprioritize, to figure out what matters, to figure out that if all of the superfluous or even happy, not even unnecessary activities were taken away and they were to scale back to just the essentials, to figure out what a day means, or what an hour means, or what does family mean, or what does communication mean, what does hugs mean, what are all of the moving parts of my life, what do they feel like, what matters to me. If I were to return to that life, what do I want to keep? If I were to return to that life, what do I want to change? What am I realizing now in this halt or this stall or this pause? What am I realizing I've never done before? What do I want to do when I get back out? What do I want to do while I'm here? an explosion on the planet of people who are growing plants from seeds, and they are learning to play an instrument or learning another language. An explosion of things that people around the planet have postponed because they thought there would be a better day or a different day, or that there'll be a time when they're less stressed or their to-do list is less packed, and they'd just be able to kind of dabble in some of their creative passions or pursuits or interests or their curiosity. So here, the universe delivered this moment where in 1 month we had a chance to make choice, to reevaluate, to become aware, to upgrade potentially the level of happiness that we lived in. But people weren't able to do it. They were able to maybe muster up enough energy to show some really good moments in those first few weeks. But as it dragged on and it dragged on, there was a resistance. There was a resistance to being free, and there was a resistance to being confined, because in both there was freedom. You take away your to-do list, there's freedom. You take your ability away to move around the country, then there is a sense of imprisonment, or around the globe, I should say, to move around the globe, and there's imprisonment. So we traded out one sense of freedom where we could move about for another sense of freedom where we didn't have to-do lists. We didn't have the same level of competing activities vying for our attention or a sense of responsibility or a sense of what makes us worthwhile. And yet we were imprisoned, so to speak, in doing it. So there was a dichotomy there that most people didn't know how to balance. How do I swap a freedom for an imprisonment and an imprisonment for a freedom and come out ahead where I choose to make different choices? So instead, most people just chose to wanting desperately to get back to the old life that it is that they used to live, with increasing feeling of urgency or being more and more increasingly suppressed, having a hard time finding the joy in the confinement that they were maybe willing to seek or pursue earlier in the journey. And as people were getting more eager to figure out what the virus means for themselves and others in the future, when they bring to the table an excessive amount of watching the news or other people's forecasts or broadcasts in the most massive unknown. So what broadcast can you possibly watch that's going to make you feel like you're living in the known instead of the unknown, right? Because nobody knows. But the more they're being bombarded with information that's either changing or is false or is intentionally false, the more they're going to not be able to focus on the gift of possibility of enlightenment, of awakening, of having the opportunity to find their interests, their curiosity, their passions. What are their priorities? What are the things that matter to them? How can they incorporate more of what matters as we move forward on this planet? And that's why things are so unknown now, and that's why the guides came in this year, the guides from this book, and it's not just these, but many, many guides are coming in to help us make sense out of all this so that we can feel more harmonious and we can feel that we have goals that we can set and a future that we can be happy with, whether that future is September 1st, December 1st, or 2024. To have the confidence to know that they will leave us equipped with tools and information that will help us navigate this new complete unknown. Okay? Just as a ship had to be built in a way that it could navigate the unknown when the first explorers did find the new world, they're helping to develop the tools and communicating with us that we can navigate our own personal compass system, the ships or the watercrafts that are sturdy enough to make it through any kinds of weather, and every other bit of information that we can use to tap into to make these journeys forward more harmonious and bring ourselves to higher levels of awakening. Okay? All right. So that's their role. They're going to help us navigate the new world. Ironically, even as I'm saying the new world, it's so funny how when you think about things in historical context, it's just funny that we would even call it the new world, and that's how we were taught, because it really wasn't a new world since there were people that were living here long before we got here. But it's just funny how we're taught things in a certain way, right? So that's just one little tiny example of how facts are fiction. It depends on who the storyteller is and the way that we receive it and the way that it is that we store it, right? This was not a new world. This was an inhabited world here, this land in the United States of America. It was not a new world. Yet we went back and told, generations and generations and generations of people afterward in schools that this was the new world that was discovered by some person in 1492. Completely untrue. Completely untrue. Facts are fiction. Okay, so now let me bring you to the second passage. Again, I picked up two passages, and here's the second one. This one, you guys are just going to jump right off the earth. I can't believe the depths of stuff that's in here, because I really like blown away. Now I know why people would say, I remember one person said it took me like a year to read it, and I was like, wow. Well, that means that you did it in a way where you're able to like digest it, because some of the thoughts in here, they might not be so developed that one paragraph, maybe you really need to read a whole book about that one paragraph. So there's a lot in here that was just kind of thrown at us, just as it was thrown to me the year that I received the book. I was thrown into this, but luckily, physically, I was connected. So I was in a very excited state as I was receiving the words. So authenticating the information was very simple for me, because I had authenticated it before I started writing it through the faith I had discovered in the process, right? So you guys might read this, and authentication might be a little bit tricky, but maybe it's not. Maybe the only authentication most of you need is that resonance. Wow, I never heard it that way before, but that makes sense. Or that's a way of looking at it that I never looked at it like that before, but that's the one that makes more sense, more so than anything that I was taught or heard on this planet before. That's the one that is in my core. That's the one that I can study or pay attention to or start to think about or start to consider, right? So even if you didn't have the experience of doing the physical channeling, if you picked up the book and you read it and you're like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense. It's because you are validating it without going through that big, long process that I did before I channeled it. So here's the second passage. So this is a big one. This is definitely a Sethian passage. June 9th, 2005. There's one thing before I read this out loud that I'm going to change, okay? I'll tell it to you. I'll read the passage and then I'll give you my little footnote on it, okay? So, the world is the stage for humans to play out their soul's intent. Over millions of years, the world reflects the changes in humans' thought patterns, ideals, and intent. Many physical disasters are actually brought about by the collective agreement of souls to choose the trial as a learning experience. Thousands of souls, for example, will choose to be born in a particular region where the soul's original intent had gotten far off track. Together, their energy will affect the disaster, enabling the fundamental correction of the direction of the soul's path. The devastating loss will cause the people to return to the basic necessities of a meaningful life, to love, to create, and to learn. The misdirected paths will quickly revert back to the true intention of the soul. If I had read the answers from cover to cover today, I would have probably been jumping up and down for joy when I got onto that paragraph, because this is the second complete synthesis of what this virus is doing. This is the byproduct of myriad disconnect from soul's intention over hundreds, thousands of years. And as we communicate more rapidly through the internet, social media, and so on, we are experiencing the collection of our conscious projection more rapidly, to the point that in 2020, the experience is global. Global. Unless you don't have internet or any form of communication with the outside world, you're in on it. You're in on it. And if you don't have internet or any communication with the outside world, you're probably still pretty blissful, because you haven't been corrupted by others' thoughts or fears or conscious projections. So that right there, that paragraph in the newer edition of the book, it's on page 45. And I see someone just cut and pasted it in the chat room. I'm clearly not here, which is why I'm stumbling a lot, right? Okay, so in the chat room, it's pasted. But those two passages, which I never would have been able to read this whole book and synthesize those two passages as an explanation for exactly what's happening for 2020. But thankfully, I didn't have to do it. They gave me the book, I picked it up, I found two passages, read nothing before, read nothing after. That's your answer. That's what 2020 is all about. And that's what they're here to help us with. That is what they're here to help us with, those two passages. Kelly asks if those passages were written by Seth. Yes, both of those passages were written by Seth. What I found Seth often did, which is why I didn't necessarily in the last three classes bring up a Seth 3-page writing, but what Seth I found he did, even though souls they're genderless when they're not in bodies, but I'll still call him he tended to infuse pieces of information throughout the book. When I write directly with Seth, and still to this day it's true, but when I write directly with Seth, I will get a dense essay that could be written into volumes of books if we were to extricate the information in every paragraph and every sentence. It would be books in every sentence. So Seth is not going to communicate with you throughout the whole entire book, because it's a lot of hard work reading what Seth writes. It's a lot of hard work. Time and time again, when he would give me a passage, I would be breathless with comprehension when I got the passage. I mean, literally, like almost hyperventilating, because I was so damn excited with the power of it and the implications of it. I would be blown away. And then later on that day, when I would go back and I would read the passage of the day, I didn't even understand what was written that had made me breathless earlier. I didn't even understand it. I didn't even understand it. So I'd have to read each sentence 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, and then the memory of what I had gotten in the beginning would come back to me. Oh, the footnote. Okay, thank you for the reminder, whoever that was. That was a good thing. My personal footnote here is Seth used words to help unify us so we would be in a common place of understanding. But one of the things he used was brought about by the collective agreement of souls to choose the trial of a learning experience. I don't use the word agreement because it gets muddied when people are talking about souls' agreements that they made before they come to Earth that they're fulfilling. And I find that when most people I've come across are talking about souls' agreements, they are, that concept, the way that it's taught on Earth, is limiting their ability to be the directors of their own journeys, and it's limiting their ability to comprehend the eternal nature of reality. Okay, so I don't use the term agreement simply because our physical circumstances on earth has really made that lose its truth. Okay, he used it here because people can come together with what they believe is the appropriate understanding of soul's agreement. So the way I understand this is that our eternal self, our higher self, had explored the possibility of how can we bring in a moment of change. But the literal way it happened in physical manifestation is that as humans' distress evaporated from them, so the energy that we're putting out, when distress evaporates, it collects in big clouds. And when those clouds get really heavy, they create a storm. So it's easy for us to think of a rainstorm collecting energy, right? And the evaporation process, and then the cloud lets it all out as rain and storms and all that. But that same consciousness that collects, that's filled with drama and angst and fear and disempowerment, it's a very volatile energy that can collect in the earth, that can collect in the seas, that can collect in the air, that can collect in the winds, that can collect in fire. Do you follow me? But when the evaporation process is released, that's what creates an event that hits a larger geographical area than just a tiny little spot, or just a challenge that comes to an individual or a small group of people. So think about, so it's not an agreement per se. We don't pre-think how we want these things to play out. We trust, we release, we watch the cause and effect in physical manifestation. What happens when we project consciousness with fear? What happens when we project consciousness with love? Then the result comes back to us, and we get to interpret the result of our conscious projection. So the word agreement is my footnote. I wouldn't use the word agreement per se, okay? But thank you, Kelly. That was really nice of you to get me back on track. I appreciate it, just to show you I'm doing a pretty good job at keeping up with the chat room. Very good. Feel free to keep putting questions in there, because as you can see, I'm doing a really good job with it. Okay, I'm still with Seth, so he's going to simplify his next statement to us. We have this idea that life is about some sort of order, that we live, we die. The agreed upon order was that we live, we grow, we get educated, we have a career, we get married, we have children, and we buy a house, and then we raise the children, and we have a career, and then we retire, and then we live happily ever after, right? That's the long time corrected agreement, at least since the industrialization period. But that's made up too. That was made up. All of this is made up. People make it up, and then other people agree to it. It's all made up. So right now we're in this period where people are looking around like, what's real? What's made up? Everything is made up. The fact that you're born into one gender's body and that's who you are, that's made up. The fact that if you're a male, you have to be with a female, that's made up. The fact that, I'm saying facts because they're all fiction, obviously. The fact that you're superior if you have white skin over black skin, that's made up. All of this stuff is made up. It's for the collective consciousness to keep pulling back the layers, keep pulling it back and get to the truth. The truth is, there was one other, oh, you know what, I think it came after. What page was that second passage? Oh, thank you. Perfect timing. August 9th? Is that where was the second passage? Oh, wait, I still have my thing on there. um, I don't know where it is. Sorry. There was one, in one of those passages that I read, the only other thing I read was something about that the purpose is to grow in our ability to give and receive love, and to love, to create, and to learn. You know, that is the only thing that matters, is to expand in our ability to give and to receive love for ourselves and others. That's the only reason we are ultimately here. We're not here to reach retirement. We're not here to learn fishing. We're not here to get married to someone that our parents say is acceptable. We're not here to take care of our parents. We're not here to update our house with the latest style that HGTV is telling us is in. We're not here to get a degree so we look good to other people. We're not here to drive a Tesla instead of an Explorer to save the planet. We're not here to get an abortion. We're not here to follow a religion. We're not here to do anything. We're not here to do any of these things. We're not here for any of it. We're here to expand in our ability to love for ourselves and for others. We're here to grow in our ability to love. If you can grow in your ability to love by practicing a religion, do it. If you can grow in your ability to receive love by getting an abortion, then that might be your path. If you can grow in your ability to love by getting a degree in psychology, then do it. If you can grow in your ability to love yourself by getting a degree in psychology, then do it. Every single thing is a vehicle for the discovery of the soul in the human complex process. Every single thing we do. There are no exceptions. We can debate rightness and wrongness and justice and injustice, but it's all made up. It's all made up. We're only here to expand in our ability to give and to receive love. The reason we're so far off track on the entire globe is because we're not doing that as a globe. Are you doing it? Yeah, I sure hope so. You're trying. I don't think you could have found me if you hadn't tried. On some level, you're trying and succeeding, or trying and still trying. But you didn't even find this book if you were not on the path to expand in your ability to grow in love, to grow in your ability to give and receive love, or to grow in your ability to give and receive love for others, grow others' ability to expand in giving or receiving love. So the universe is taking away stuff to help us get to the core of what matters, to get to the core of what our priorities are. Imagine if we just completely stopped manufacturing and completely stopped our food supply chains, where one person grows a lot of coffee beans and distributes it around the world. Imagine if we stopped caring what people thought about us. Imagine if we stopped trying to do what other people expect of us. Imagine if we stopped caring about money as our most significant element of choice or worship. Imagine if we stopped all of that stuff, even if it were just for a moment. If we just stopped all of that other stuff, then we could get to the core of what matters, which is expanding in our ability to give and receive love for ourselves, or helping others to expand in their ability to give or receive love. That's it. That's what it all comes down to. So what the guides are going to do with us, and to anyone I've communicated with in the last few years, and for any other person who's really striving to be very cleanly connected, that they can bring through this information on the planet without contributing to more fear or confusion or disempowerment. But what we're all trying to do, and hopefully you are trying to do too, is to help us understand how to create our own physical reality in the midst of all this, for now and for the future, and how to assist
while being harmonious to ourselves, how do we assist others in doing that as well? So this collection of souls is here to advance that approach and to advance our knowledge of how to integrate that approach. When I started to communicate with the author of the primary author, Ayn Rand, and I was communicating mostly with her and Seth and George Harrison, as I talked about in the last 3 classes. I was communicating with them hours and hours and hours every day. And as I was communicating with them, and I was still little, right? I still saw myself as really, really, really little. You know, based on the history of my physical life, I had become a very, very, very small and insignificant being, right? So as I was communicating with them and learning to have faith and learning to stop making them prove hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times everything that it is that they were saying, as I started to have faith in them, I would ask them all sorts of questions. And I would ask, like, how many guides are in on this? And then I would say, how many guides are in on, you know, trying to help me get this out there? And then I would ask, well, how many guides are helping those who are in on this and trying to help me get this out there? And every time I posed the question, whether it was every few weeks or every few months, the number would grow. And so I would be like, wow, I would be like, oh, it must be like an avalanche or something, or like some snowball going down a mountain. As soon as we get started, it just picks up a lot more energy and math, right? So it wasn't the case. What happened was the guides would tell me very small numbers in the beginning. Like, oh, it's just the 3 of us hanging out. We're trying to give you a boost here. And then the next time they'd say, it's probably like 50, a few dozen of us. And then they'd give the next number and the next number. What they were doing was not telling me that it was expanding, but they were helping to move me from my feeling of insignificance to my feeling of significance in bite-sized pieces. Because if I entered into the space and they said there's 10,000 souls that are helping with this book, and there's 10,000 souls that are helping to bring in a new era for the whole entire planet, I would have been like, kind of like, I'm out. I would have felt even smaller and less significant and more inferior and less apt and more like you shouldn't have chosen me or anything. So what they did was like, oh, 3, all right, I can handle that. As long as I'm talking to them 24/7, getting to know them, really getting to remember that. I'm like, okay, that's okay. I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. So at the last count, when I stopped asking them how many souls, the last count, they said, well, let's just say it's like tens of thousands. And I'm like, oh, all right. So I stopped asking because I recognized that the number isn't what matters. It's the vibrational energy that matters. And if suppose it's 1 million souls, suppose it's tens of thousands of souls, either amount means that you and me were a part of it because we opted in, because our minds are open to the possibility that we can use their influence and their understanding of our physical journey without all the masks and layers and misinformation that we're living with as human beings, that we can tap into that we can utilize that they are helpful, that they are enlightened, that they are pure souls, that they are love, that they are always expanding in their ability to understand how we collectively and individually can tap into their assistance, right? So in the beginning of going further into the answers, we spoke with a number of souls directly and started to see how they are a part of our day-to-day life, or how they communicate with us, or how we can witness them. And now here we're jumping into, we gave you no time to catch up whatsoever. Now you just have to trust that they're there, because we gave you 3 little tiny homework assignments to prove that they are there. So now stick with it. We went from elementary school to graduate school in 3 hours. So now that you're all caught up, now we get to know that they're there. They're all here for all of us, and we get to truly tap into the value that they can provide us. Okay. All right. There's a word that I've been, just so you know, Seth is not the one directly communicating with me anymore. I'll just try as best as I can to communicate with you when there's a change. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, so all right. So the first soul that's coming in right now is Ayn Rand, of course. You all know that. But there's another soul who gave us guest passages in this book, and she gave a couple in here. She had been known on the planet she had been known as Elizabeth Glaser, and I think I'm spelling it correctly, but I don't really know. I hope I am. But she was the wife of a Hollywood actor who was one of the very first known of people who had gotten a transfusion during the onset of the AIDS virus, and she had eventually contracted full-blown AIDS and died of AIDS. She had contracted HIV and had died of AIDS. And so she became like a spokesperson or a symbol for the planet to bring the elements of HIV out of it being what had been categorized as a homosexual illness, and bring it into mainstream to be able to bring people who were small-minded into the seriousness and the potency of this virus. Okay, so she was, I would see her, I didn't think of this until I'm talking to you right now, but I'm getting it with her. But so she would have been one of the bridges that would bring us from thinking that there's a group of people who have been marginalized, therefore there was less attention on their challenge. So she bridged that to saying that this is a humanity problem, so people who were marginalizing this group could get on board and start to get active in the process of determining how we could help, how the planet could help, okay? So we all know how that played out over the decade of the 1980s, and it was as much of a hot mess as this concentrated version of Corona is right now. Actually, it was a hell of a lot more of a mess. Much, much, much more brutal, much more brutal. So she, let's call her, and I don't think she's really naming herself, so let's say there's other guides there. Guides don't have any egos, but let's just call her the bridge, okay? So the bridge, what she's indicating is that she's going to take a word, and we're going to talk about this. Oh, and I apologize. I didn't expect her to be in tonight, so I didn't look up on my original transcripts which passages were hers, okay? So what I would really appreciate is if somebody would email me. I'll do my best to save the chat, but if someone would send me a message to come back to all of you who are registered and tell you which her, I think she had 2 passages in the book. I would love for you to see which passages were hers. Her passages, I don't remember which ones they are, but I do remember they were, I found oftentimes the passage just seemed like it was like out of place. It just kind of like landed there. I remember for sure hers just kind of like landed there, and she didn't co-write her passages. They were written entirely by her. So I'll follow up and I'll tell you which ones are hers, and you can take a peek at that because I always find that pretty interesting. So the word she's giving us tonight. All right, the word she's giving us is provocative. What provocative means is that it calls your attention because in some way or another it's different. It's a little outrageous. It's potentially salacious. It's different. It's unusual. It's unique. But what the whole idea of it is things that are provocative. They capture our attention, and it's very difficult to look away. Okay. So if you think, just run through a few examples in your head of something that you would label as provocative. As a matter of fact, if you guys want to just throw some things in the chat room of something that's provocative, people who behave provocatively do so consciously or unconsciously to incite reaction, to get people to pay attention. And I did say consciously or unconsciously, because there are many people and groups that behave provocatively that don't even realize that they are, but then they can get very addicted to the result of their provocative behavior because it created a lot of attention, which really does feed the ego. When the ego is being fed, the ego is insatiable, okay? So, and it's not all, and something that's provocative doesn't mean that it's necessarily negative, but it is large and attention worthy, right? So what Elizabeth is saying is that when she, yes, that's provocative. Thank you. The Selma March is a great example. Yeah, so provocative is not necessarily negative. It could be profoundly positive. It could be, it's probably going to have a little bit of something. But yes, that was a really good example. Anyone else give examples? I think that was a really good example. Thank you, Kelly. So she was provocative, not intentionally, but because she became the bridge to go from the marginalized to the generalized. She was newsworthy. Her story was attention grabbing. And even, I'm sure that you guys understand that as I'm communicating with her, when I'm using the pronoun she, I'm using it kind of like textbook generically, meaning her path. I'm talking about her path. I'm not talking about her per se. I'm not making comments on her as a person in the embodiment of Elizabeth. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about her almost as the metaphor of her being the bridge, or one of the bridges. So she was provocative. She was eye-turning. She was newsworthy. She got people to think. She created fear because people who thought that they were immune to HIV were now being told that they were not immune, that this could come in and shatter their world, their peace, their expectations, their known, their environment in which they believed they had control. And for many, there was a ton of judgment and morality focused into the shattering of it being for a small marginalized group and including everyone. All of a sudden, are they allowed to judge themselves? You know, they're coming off of statements and beliefs that if they knew anyone that was HIV positive, that meant that they were homosexual and having unsafe sex, right? So now all of a sudden, this minimal context has been shattered, right? So all of this is provocative. It's provocative. So as the guides are helping us to understand what can we do to help in this unsettled period of history to move from an egoic planet to a soulful planet, is to stop and pause every time you are lured into something that is provocative. interesting, the root word in provocative is provoke. So every time you are provoked into a reaction, good, it could be good or bad, stop and pause. And here's what she is suggesting that we do when we stop and pause. I'm in the same exact mindset I was when I was channeling the answers, and I haven't been in that mindset in a really long time. I am listening and I'm getting downloads and I am recording very, very rapidly. I think on some level your guides are almost writing a book through all of us as we speak. So more will come of this. Because I didn't think of any of this in my entire life, and to me it's fascinating. I don't know if it's fascinating to you, but it's really blowing me out of the water, okay? Stop and pause when you are provoked. Stop and pause when you're drawn into something that is provocative. Stop and pause. First thing you're going to do is say, is this true? Second thing you're going to say is, does this make sense? The third thing you're going to say is this helpful? And the A and B on is this helpful? You probably can't read that, so I'll read it out loud. The helpful part is two parts. Is this helpful for me? And is this helpful for others? It's a two-part. All right, let's go through this. I'm provoked. Something provocative and compelling is happening, okay? And it's a story about how a person went to a party, and the party had 20 people instead of the mandated 10 for a social gathering. And then it was found out that somebody had a fever at that party, and then it became known that that person was sick. So it's really, really provocative, right? It's very, very provocative. And the story continues that 12 people out of the 20 got COVID-19. Now it's really, really compelling, and I can't look away, okay? Is this true? We really have no idea, right? We have no idea whether it's true or not. We don't know if those 12 people showed up with COVID in their system already and had not been tested. And as soon as they were told that somebody at the party had COVID, they got tested. We don't know if the virus was laying latent in their body and they had no symptoms, but as soon as they took in that they have a tremendous probability of getting the disease, that it booted up the sleeping virus and the virus came out. We don't really know, do we? We might say, well, scientifically, that's not possible. Well, really, I want you to show me one thing in science that has not been disproven. Over the last 100 years, show me something that hasn't been altered or changed. So just because science doesn't say that it's so today doesn't mean necessarily that it's not true. So is this true? I really have no freaking idea if it's true or not. I don't know if somebody made it up. For all I know, the Russians could have hacked into the television and made the whole damn story up by taking over the reporters' little prompter things and they're reading something that the Russians typed in. I really don't know if it's true, do I? No, I don't. I do not know if it's true. Am I going to assume it's true because it's provocative? Well, if I want to assume it's true because it's provocative, then let's go to question number 2. Does this make sense? Does it make sense that, I mean, the first time I heard a story like this, the news was reported approximately 24 hours after the party. I'm sorry, but that doesn't make sense. How could we have a party with 20 people and the following day it's in the news that 12 of them got sick from being at that party? It doesn't make sense, right? So you got to think, does this really make sense? All right, so let's say we got past the second question and suppose it does make sense. Okay, is this helpful? Let's not skip number 3. Is this helpful? Okay, this one is difficult. Is this helpful? Okay, so we believe it's true because we got past number 1. Does this make sense? We're like, yeah, that makes sense. So now we're on number 3, right? So we went through the first thing. This is true, and yes, this makes sense. So now we're to number 3. Is this helpful? Is this helpful? This is where you really got to bring something other than your ego to the table. Is this true? I mean, is this helpful? It's going to be based on your agenda. Do you want to be afraid or do you want to be strong? Do you want to give in? Do you want to hide? Do you want to skip a social event that's coming up on Friday and this gives you an excuse? Do you miss hugging people and you believe that being in love and contact with people is the greatest protection that you could have? Is this helpful means, what is your agenda? Are you going to tell other people about this? Are you going to share the link with others? Are you going to send other people the video? If you're going to do all of that, are you trying to protect them? Are you trying to win people over to fear? Or are you trying to grow the virus? It's an amazing, amazing question. Is this helpful? Is this helpful? What's the consequence of you believing it? What's the consequence of you taking in that you think it makes sense? How does it change your vibration? What does it do to your vibration? Does it make it stronger? Do you feel more powerful? Does it make you weaker? Do you feel disempowered? Is this helpful? The benchmark after that is it positive or negatively affecting my vibrational energy? Is it positively or negatively affecting my vibrational energy? So is this helpful? The question can be altered to, is this possibility making my vibration or my outlook or my experience or my heart rate, is it better or worse? Then you have a choice. If your answer is that yes, it's true, yes, it makes sense, yes, I believe it to be helpful, and all of a sudden I got to the point where it's downgrading my vibrational energy, then throw it away. That's hard. That is so hard to do it, right? But if facts are fiction, then why not throw away anything that is not bringing you only to here, only to here, only to here? Why not just toss it? Don't give it a happy home. Don't give it a place to grow and thrive. Don't give it a place to live. Don't give it a place to pass on and create fear for other people. Don't enhance this provocative experience if you're being brought here. On the contrary, if the provocative experience is bringing you here, then yes, take it in, give it a happy home, share it, explore it, celebrate it, write it down, revisit it. An example would be the news after people watch the video of George Floyd. Is it provocative? Yes. Is it true? Yes. Does this make sense? Yes. We have a 400 plus year history behind it, so yes, it makes sense. Is this helpful? Yes. Now, for you, when we get to that point, is it hitting me positively or negatively? If it's negative, try to not give it a happy home in you, or it's going to grow disease and anger and confusion and disempowerment. But if you can take it and convert it into something positive, then give it a home. Give it a home. So for me, my reaction is, first of all, I let the earth people do whatever they have to do with a bit of provocative news, and I don't enter into the fray at the moment. I stay away for a moment so everybody can have their immediate reactions, because hopefully everyone's immediate reaction is right here, because if it's not, I certainly wouldn't know you, right? So your first reaction is going to be here, but then the dust settles and stuff happens and people do things. And then you realize that, oh my God, this one could be it. This one could be just the way Elizabeth Glaser was the bridge to bring a marginalized group to the whole, right? This one could be it. Now I'm psyched. Now I'm totally psyched. So I will give it a home. I will grow it. I will educate myself. I will learn more. I will discover. I will share. I'm not going to ever share the video or look at it, but I will share the positive possibilities with others. It gives hope. I like that you wrote that. Carolyn, thank you. Hope. Yes, exactly. Wow. I've never seen this before, and this makes so much sense. I'm going to somehow, some way get the transcript from Provocative on, and this is going into probably the book I'm writing, okay? No matter what, I feel so happy that I was on this call because I got to listen to our guides and hear them say this for the first time I've ever heard it. I find it to be incredibly, incredibly, incredibly helpful. Incredibly helpful. All right, people just type in, thank you, Ann. Type in some questions because I got to pause. I had a lot going on in the last hour and a half without a break. So type in some questions. I realized that I didn't give you a break. I was going to give you a break tonight. I didn't give anybody a break because things were coming in way too fast, way too rapidly, and way too unstoppably. And so I didn't give you a break. So what we're going to do is just please ask some questions. And yes, I love that, Kelly. Thank you for putting that in there. It doesn't even have to be a question. I do accept compliments and I accept insights as well. So yay for that. But put in your question. So I'll try to answer your questions for the last few minutes and we'll just end early because I think they've thrown enough at us for one night, to be perfectly honest. I really do. I think they threw enough at us. Thank you. All All right, Jeannie, I don't understand. I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna, the human stuff's not going that well. Could you unmute, Jeannie? I think I need an assistant. All right, Jeannie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so out of my body. I'm having a very hard time processing. So could you just explain that to me in words? That would be really nice.
Yes, I could. First, I just have to tell you how blown away I am by the last hour and a half. So that was absolutely amazing. I'm going to re-listen to this and write every word down.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was a little surprised myself. Okay.
But when Seth came through the last time, I was very excited because, as you know, he has always been the intuitive source that I tap your shoulder to get information from him, especially for Lauren. And he has come through with organic and all kinds of things with respect to her. But this book is blowing my mind away, and it's blowing hers away too, because it's everything that you've been telling me, which is organic, how you've been growing your own food, how you've become more plant focused on your diet and really let go of the need for any animal proteins. It's not like you're against them, but you find that it is much more helpful for you to have that focus. And while I've tried to convey that information to myself and to Lauren, this book is mind-boggling because he speaks like you do.
Yeah,
he does. It's a very easy to understand dynamic. And I kept asking Seth over and over and over again, and I really believe that this came directly from him. So
I love that. I love that. I appreciate it. And just to add some clarity to what Jeannie said, in my own process of enlightenment, I no longer agree to the concepts of right or wrong or morality or sin or anything like that. My choices always come from one very simple idea now, and it helps to be my guide. And the guide of choice is honor. I like to live in honor. So if I live in honor of the plant community, the animal community, the planet, myself, others, and so on. If we look at the history of the world, before mass food sources have existed and the transportation to get them from one part of the globe to another, we used to have to base our diet entirely through most of history. This recent ability to eat foods that are out of the context of our local region, it is a drop of sand. It is a grain of sand, not a drop, a grain of sand on the beach, comparing it to all of human history. But up until this recent ability that we have to mass produce and transport, there was nothing immoral about eating animals. So people get very confused when they start to think about vegetarianism and the morality of it. It's not that it's immoral to eat animals, but what we are doing, it's about how we are treating the animal community. There's a big difference. If I were an Eskimo, I couldn't have a moral issue with eating fish and seals and other food sources around because there was no vegetables, okay? So take the idea of morality out of it. It's about honor. Are we honoring how our food is raised and sourced and delivered? Living in honor is a very, very, very different concept than looking at things from a moral perspective. So part of the increase in autoimmune diseases on the planet, and especially for those who are younger than 40, because we used to write some of those off to the process of aging, which was also not true. But since it's been so hard hitting in the younger generations, it has all to do with the fact that we're waking up toward living in honor. Yes, and that would be a very Seth kind of conversation to direct us to. I would love to know. You know what I could probably do? I don't remember, but if someone were to email me, sorry, I'm giving you so much homework on the fly here, but if someone were to email me, I can pull up my transcript from the answers and see where the word honor appears in there, because I think it would be really, really, really fascinating. I think they talked about honor, but I really don't. But it would be very fascinating for me to cross-reference the appearance of the word honor and the concept of it in the answers, and cross-reference it to which souls had narrated those passages to me. Just out of curiosity, I would love to see that, so I'm certainly willing to do the cross-reference and bring it back to you on the next time that we speak. Which date, I don't know, so if someone wants to type that in. But that's a really good point. And interestingly, you kind of segued me to it, Jeannie. The physical part's not working that well today. Tonight, I should say. Okay, you segued. I want to try it. You brought me from one concept to another, because earlier on, when I was going through this list, I kept hearing the word honor in the background from not just Seth, but a bunch of different guides, because I realized that if we had more time tonight, they wanted me to develop the concept. But what you did was to August 12th and August 27th are our next dates. But what you did, Jeannie, was you at least let me put the word out there and the concept, because one of the things we're clearly going to be doing in these 3 sessions is to figure out how to advance in this period of history for ourselves and others. I think advance is the right word. We don't want to survive. We want to advance for ourselves and others. So honor, you segued into at least me notating today the significance of that vibrational energy and everything that's unfolding in 2020 and beyond. So I appreciate that. Maybe Seth tapped you and said, Jeannie, could you bring this in? But that's very, very, very helpful. Okay. Homework is important. I won't be collecting your notebooks at the end of the class, but homework is important because it's the way that we hold our feet to the fire so that we're putting into our physical existence concepts. The mind is a sieve. I hate to say it, but the mind is a sieve, and all of this will just wash right through us unless we take some kind of practical steps to implement it into our lives. That's why guides give homework so much. So your homework assignment, and I would really appreciate you sharing. You don't have to write novels, but just a few sentences here and there. And I always keep all the homeworks when I share them with each other. I keep them anonymous to give you permission to say anything you want, whether you're proud or not proud. It all goes out there because it's helpful. Even the non-proud moments are helpful to others. But share how you were able to use the process of provocative as your trigger, and you're going through these steps. Is this true? Does this make sense? Is this helpful? If it's helpful, is it having a positive effect on my vibration or a negative effect on my vibration? And try to use some real life examples, like anything, positive or negative. And don't hesitate to use ones that are negative, because isn't that where we're trying to amp up our ability to react and process the world as it's truly unfolding? More of the provocative things that are negative command our attention than the provocative things that are positive, okay? I'll also leave you with, just to let you know and give you some advance notice, beginning in September, and I'll be putting an email out, and it'll all go up on my website very, very soon. Hopefully by the end of the week it'll go up. But I will be doing I'm going to be doing Zoom classes for the months of September, October, and November, and December. And I'm doing a variety of them, and you'll see the dates and everything. I just want to say, if anybody has a credit for an in-person seminar that didn't take place over the last few months, if you would like to use your credit toward any of the upcoming Zoom classes, just contact Stryker and he'll give you a way to use that credit, okay? I just want to make sure everybody knows that, since the classes, the two events that I had on the schedule that were canceled, we still don't have dates for when they will take place. So you can register for them when they will take place over again. But if you want to use your credit in advance, that's fine too. Anyway, you can hold it there until it's scheduled, or you can use the credit. It doesn't matter to me. But we're going to be doing some topics, and I'll tell you the topics that have popped up so far. The guides have told me, but there will be others. Okay. The first one is, this one's going to be intensive. So don't sign up for it unless you're ready for some work, okay? This one's going to be intense. It's going to be a very full-fledged, intense course. There'll be homework. It's going to be intense, but it could be life-changing for you. And this one is going to be about relationships. And here's what it's going to look like. We're going to have online classes for everybody, and then we're going to have more intimate discussion groups by Zoom with just small groups of people. When you sign up for the intensive relationship course, you will have admission into one of the 3 discussion groups. The 3 discussion groups are going to be, there'll be one on parenting, okay? There'll be one on relationships. I have it written down somewhere. I don't know where I wrote it because I just got it today. Oh, I know where it is. It's on my desktop. There'll be one on like romantic relationships, or your relationship with, romantic is a good way to say it. And then there'll be a discussion group in your relationships with others, like extended family, friends, coworkers, and so on that. But we'll have breakout discussion groups so we can have more interaction, a little bit more homework, and more of an opportunity to delve into a specific topic that you are trying to apply the relationship information to make it work differently in your personal life. The other topic I was given, this one I was just given today, and I didn't write it down, so hopefully it'll come to me. Oh, I know. This is it. The second topic that I've been made aware of so far is the unknown. We're going to be delving into the unknown. It's not going to be nearly as intensive as the relationship course, but that's going to be one other topic. And as they develop and as getting more information from the guides, we'll list them and we'll keep you posted about what possibilities there are. And we'll putting forth the dates for all of them. If you take the relationship one, feel free to sign up for any of the others at the same time. Sometimes they'll be going consecutively. But the more, the simpler ones, like unknown, like this one further into the answers, those will run all the way through while this one is running through, but they'll go one after the other, okay? So you can join more than one if you want to. And that's what I have planned for the rest of the year. I really appreciate you being here with me and Elizabeth and Seth and Ein and all of your guides and all of the other guides, tens of thousands of guides that are really helping to give us some information of value as the world is changing more rapidly than we can even say rapidly, okay? Let me look at all your beautiful faces again. I'm happy to see everybody. Thank you very much, and I will talk to everybody very, very, very soon. Thank you.